Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Money Carer podcast. I'm very excited today to be joined by Michael Kesher. Michael is the Senior Director of Business Development and Sales for Fingerprint Cards, and we welcome Michael to the show. We've been wanting to do this podcast for quite a bit of time, and we finally got our diaries together. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Sean, for having me.
We're truly global. I mean, I'm in South Africa at the minute, and you're in Sweden. I suspect the weather's here that is a little bit warmer.
Yeah, probably is. We have a bit of sunshine, so we're quite happy here in Sweden. It's been a long winter.
I've yet to go to Sweden. It's very much on my bucket list, and we talked about getting together and talking about biometric cards in Sweden as well. So that may be something we do later in the year, perhaps. But on that note, Michael, it would be great if you could introduce Fingerprint Cards and your role and what the organisation does, and put it into context for myself and our listeners. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. So Fingerprint Cards been around for a very long time. We had the first idea of placing a biometric sensor on a card itself, 1997, I think. So, our founder had a great idea. He was at a restaurant in France, and he paid by his card, and he had some greasy fingers. So when he gave the card, he could see the fingerprint from his greasy fingers on the card, and that's where the idea came from.
Really?
And hence the name Fingerprint Cards.
Good story.
Yeah.
It's funny how these things come about sometimes.
Yeah, it is. But ever since then, we were thinking about placing biometric payment cards and placing fingerprints on biometric payment cards and access cards and so on and so forth. But really, our breakthrough to the market was mobile phones. And with Huawei launching the first mobile phone with a biometric sensor on it, which was our sensor, the market took off pretty fast. And all of a sudden, all the mobile phones had biometric sensors on them. And now, 9 out of 10 mobile phone manufacturers uses our technology, and we are also quite big in PC and laptops. And now we're entering the card market, the payment card and access market as well.
And how many markets do you operate in?
So it's what we call payment and access, and then we have mobile and PC.
And how many countries do you operate in? I guess.
I think we're quite global. We're the biggest biometric company there is. So we're a global company operating in many different countries.
And how long have you been working for the organization?
So I've been in the company for around 2 years now.
Okay, things are moving pretty quickly.
It does. It sure does.
Well, obviously, we're here to talk about biometric cards and the opportunity there, and specifically about how there's an enormous opportunity, a very important opportunity for how this new technology can support vulnerable folk and their carers. And obviously, within the context of Money Carer, we'll be talking about that. But before that, if you could just tell me in the audience a bit about how you see the size of the opportunity for, I guess you'd say, the mainstream market, and what sort of traction are you seeing across the board in terms of for individuals to have biometric cards, be they credit cards or debit cards?
Yeah, then I think I'll start off with talking a bit about the benefit of a biometric payment card. So today you see biometrics on almost all smartphones. So we as consumers, we're getting aware of the product, and we are quite demanding, I would say. If you have something which you value on a mobile device, you want it everywhere. And biometrics is one of those things. And PIN codes, as we all know, it's been a hassle for many years, and it's so old school. So going from something like having to remember something or something to something you actually are or someone you actually are, it's where the market is going to. And with biometrics, you don't have to remember anything. What we do is we evaluate who you actually are. So with the concept of bringing biometrics into the card, you have a fingerprint sensor on the device itself, on the card itself, which you just place your finger on it and you tap like a regular contactless transaction and pay. So the card recognizes you as the holder of the card, and you don't have to remember any PIN code anymore. So that's really the value. And other values that comes with it is, of course, security. Password's been around a long time, but we know it's quite vulnerable. So if my father, for example, I think I've told you this story before, Sean.
You did indeed.
Yeah. And that's a great example, right? He's quite old. He's not that old, but 60, 65. And I think it was 11 or 12 years ago, he got a stroke. So he has some issues remembering his PIN
Yeah.
code. So what he needs to do is he either needs to write down the PIN code in a piece of paper every time he needs to pay, or he needs to go around and carrying a bunch of cash.
Yeah.
And neither of those is good examples for him, right? Or
Mhm.
usages. So what we say is, with a biometric payment card in his world would be much easier, because then he doesn't need to remember any PIN code. He doesn't need to go around with a bunch of cash. He just places his finger on the card and pay. And with that, you also have the security aspects, of course, of no one knowing your PIN code, but also that we can take away the contactless cap. So you don't have to, stand by the terminal and say, oh, do I need to have a PIN code now when it's over 45 euros, or is it contactless? And that's always a hassle when you go and pay. Every 4 or 5 times you need to register your PIN code, even though it's under the contactless limit. So that's just one of the examples which biometric brings a value.
I very much enjoyed our meeting in London earlier this year, because there's a bunch of people in the room from the industry as well. And often when I'm explaining what MoneyCare does and why we were so interested to explore the biometric card opportunity, it can take a bit of explaining when I'm talking about carers and clients and examples. You would just look at like, yep. I get it. I've got a family member, and it just straight away just makes that part of my role easier, because you just got it straight away. And it was I think the meeting sort of accelerated very, very quickly after that, and I thoroughly enjoyed that meeting. And it's led to obviously working together, and we're very much looking forward to launching the product later this year. So that's all great. Now, you used the example of your dad, which is perfectly, and it's a great segue for me to talk about that scenario and our client base. And I remember the thing that we got into very quickly as well, and you've done a great job there explaining the technicalities and the security issues. And we were talking about dignity. It's also, if somebody is suffering from memory problems, or they can get frustrated, they can get embarrassed by not remembering the PIN number. And it's that dignity aspect that we really think is important as well. And I'm so excited about launching this product together, as I know you are, Michael. Yeah, and so many people will benefit from it. And for our clients, as you know, MoneyCare, we have thousands of clients from the whole range of vulnerabilities. So, as you mentioned, perhaps older people with memory problems, to people with severe and mild learning disabilities. We have clients who struggle with drug and alcohol problems, for example. Essentially, it's vulnerable adults. And we really think that being able to offer this product to not only our clients, but their carers, and I'll come into that in a second, we just think is groundbreaking. As you've used the case before, we have lots of clients who they've been assessed as not having the capacity to manage their full finances, and in the UK deal with the DWP, their benefit responsibilities. But that doesn't mean they don't have capacity to do some things. But if they can't remember a PIN number, we wouldn't be able to give them a card, because they wouldn't remember the PIN number, or the chap next door may very well remember the PIN number. We'd be happy to spend their money for them, shall we say. So this just means that when we launch the product, straight away, lots of our clients will be delighted, because we're bringing them into more mainstream financial services, which is very important. So we just really don't see any downside to this at all. I'm sure there'll be things and kinks along the way as we work together and get things sorted, and that's all exciting as well. But whenever I tell anyone about this concept, everyone just gets like, what a fantastic thing to do, particularly CEOs of care providers, local authorities that we work with, the councils in the UK. It's a no-brainer if you operate in this space. And I think I mentioned carers and the support workers as well. We see it to play a very, very important role there, because we have lots of clients who are supported to live independently in their own house, for example, or not in a supported living environment, but they can't do the shopping themselves. They need support to do that, or in many cases, it's the carers themselves that are doing that role. And it's a position of trust. And it's not perfect at the minute. We have processes in place and sweep systems and all sorts to manage risk and these things. But being able to provide a card for that purpose for a carer, for example, who you know exactly who's used that card and when, not only is it reassuring from a risk point of view to this organisation, but it very much is reducing risk for the care provider themselves, our vulnerable clients, and the carer. And we have lots of carers who worry about accessing people's money. And, we've had situations where people with memory problems have made false accusations about carers and what have you. So we just think this is, again, it's a very good product to bring to market, and we're looking forward to it.
What we're basically saying here is we're basically talking about financial inclusion. That's, the broader terms of it, right? And what I think we want to do with this type of product, of course, it's a mainstream product, and that's basically the sense of it. We don't want to have, separated products just for the vulnerable. What we want to do is bring a technology to the mass market, which everyone can use. As an example, you see more and more post terminals becoming more smart. So either it's a phone or it's just a looks like a phone where it's more touch display rather than button. And if you have a problem with your sight, or if you're blind, for example, you can't see any numbers, so you can't really touch the POS terminal because you don't know how to enter your PIN code, right? In this sense, we would help those as well. And what we want to do with biometric payment cards is actually bringing this product to the mass market, and we will include what we call financial inclusion. We will include everyone with memory losses, blind, or any other type of problems which we could include in the financial system with this type of problems and with this type of solution. And they are quite many. Which
I couldn't agree more, Michael. And I think what will happen is, as the product gets more established and its user cases become more apparent, I think innovation will continue, and I think that technology will find its way into different areas in the mainstream market to support people as well. I think we exchanged emails about other devices and how biometrics can possibly support our client base in that area as well. But I think that's just an example of how products will develop using this technology as time goes on. And obviously, we'll be launching the product initially in the UK, which is where our main customer base is. But we do want to launch this in other markets as well. You've talked about your dad in Sweden. And you mentioned him carrying a load of cash around as well. I was under the impression that Sweden was way down the road in terms of being a cashless society. Tell me a bit about that.
So the issue is when he goes around with a bunch of cash, he can't pay everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's also an issue, and that's also a problem which we faced. So this product would actually help him a lot in Sweden, and not only in Sweden. We are seeing that cash is decreasing and card payments are increasing. And now when we also talk about the technology of the cards, we need to see that there hasn't really been any type of innovation in payment cards since contactless came 10 years or so ago, right? What we have seen is rather materials like eco-friendly cards or metal cards and so on and so forth. So there hasn't really been any type of new technology coming in. So I think biometric in that sense would also be quite adapted and interesting to bring to the market, because I travel around the world and I talk to banks every day. That's my day-to-day work, and I think I haven't met any bank who hasn't seen the value of biometric payment cards. So I'm quite firm in my belief that this will be a mass market sooner or later.
Are you looking for, as is often the case, you get the first movers in the marketplace, and then other people come on board. Someone has to test a new product out ultimately.
That's completely right. We have launched with the biggest bank in Europe, like Crédit Agricole, BNP Paribas, for example. And you're in the industry. BBVA Group, Guarantee, just announced that they are launching as well in Turkey. So they are the ones who I would say sets the trend. And then we have some followers who will follow as well.
Trend's an interesting word, because although obviously our customer base is vulnerable folk, I'm curious, I'm interested to know, when we launch this product, I think it could become trendy. It wouldn't surprise me if we have people who find out, oh, can I have one as well, who aren't necessarily our customers, and we have that legal role with them. But I'm just interested as to the response, because I want one, I'll tell you that much. So, I think it will be interesting to see where it goes. I think what would be helpful as well is if you could just talk through the actual process of, how, when the card arrives and you have the sleeve enabler, how you actually activate the card. That's some of the sort of practical steps involved to how you get the card up and running and what it entails. That'd be very useful for our listeners, I think.
Sure. So we have different ways of what we call enrolling your fingerprint. So one of the ways is that you get a sleeve where you insert the card, and the sleeve itself will show you how you enroll your card. So it's basically touching the fingerprint sensor. I think it's 10 or 12 times, and then it's done. It takes about 1 or 2 minutes. So that's one way of doing it. And then together with our partners, we are actually also very soon launching something we call mobile enrollment. But we're not there quite yet,
Just
but
yet, yeah.
yeah, it's going to come soon, I think.
And we talked about this when you gave me the demonstration of the sleeve, actually, when we met earlier this year. We talked about the other development work that you're doing around activating cards. And again, when I was talking about innovation before, I think they're the types of things that will change things, bring new people in, offer choice, and it's sort of very exciting times. So I think from our perspective, we're very excited with this partnership. I'm looking forward to having that first card in my hand that I can physically test myself, and that's how my brain's worked. I'm going to test the thing and work it and use it, and I'm really excited about that. But I'd just like to thank you, Michael, for coming. I know you're a very busy man, and you've been traveling a lot this week by the sounds of it as well. So thank you for your time, thank you for your input, and perhaps we could do a follow-up podcast a bit further down when we actually launch the card.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me here, Sean. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
If you have a question you would like to raise for a future Money Carer podcast, or if you have any comments on anything you've heard today, then do please get in touch with us at info@moneycarer.org.uk. Thanks for listening.